Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos. The main character, after dying in his previous life, he wakes up inside of Hazbin Hotel as the 6'3", blue eyes, alive Gojo. What is he gonna do inside of Hazbin Hotel?
Argued that the tenants had accepted the building's maintenance schedule by remaining after notice. The tenants produced photographs of broken panes, receipts from repairs they had paid for themselves, and the original Sunlight invoices showing the fee had changed only after the contract cord was removed. The judge was not sympathetic. He was bored. That turned out to be better. "Show me the repair costs," he said. The landlord could not. "Show me the contractor invoices." "None." "Show me the maintenance schedule." Blank. The judge struck the fee. Not because the hotel was right. Because the landlord had failed to prove the charge corresponded to maintenance. The tenants cheered outside. Gojo did not join them. The woman found him across the street. "You knew we'd win." "No." "Then why didn't you come in?" "Because you asked us not to solve it for you." She looked at him for a long moment. "That's the first time someone powerful has listened when I said that." Gojo lost the smile. He looked toward Charlie exiting the court with a stack of copied rulings. "That's depressing. Welcome to hell." Charlie heard the last line. "You know, people keep saying that like it's an excuse." The tenant shrugged. "Sometimes it's just an address." That sentence stayed with Gojo longer than the court victory. Hell as an address instead of an identity. A place people lived, not a definition of what they deserved. He hated when ordinary strangers became philosophical before he did. Chapter 39. The hotel's uninvited guest. Nifty found the assassin in the laundry vent. She found him because he had folded one towel incorrectly. Vaggie arrived as the vent cover fell open. The assassin fired a contract needle toward Gojo's back. Infinity stopped it. The needle hovered over his coat, its red thread still attached to a spool hidden in the vent. "That is rude," Nifty said. The assassin pulled the thread. The needle turned toward Vaggie's heart instead. Gojo used blue to drag the spool through the wall. The assassin came with it, crashing onto the hallway floor. Vaggie pinned him with her spear before he could stand. "Who sent you?" she asked. The assassin laughed. "The contract does not permit names." Gojo picked up the needle. 6 eyes found the loophole. The contract forbade speech, not writing. He placed a sheet of hotel stationery in front of the assassin. "Right." The assassin's hand moved against his will. A name appeared, followed by a second name and the location of the payment. Nifty read it upside down. "That is a very messy signature." "It is enough," Gojo said. Vaggie wanted to kill the assassin. Charlie arrived before she could decide. "Does he have to die?" "No," Gojo said. "He has to leave with the contract reversed." He sent the needle's thread back through the vent. The mark on the assassin's wrist flared and transferred to the person who had paid him. The assassin stared at the clean skin where the contract had been. "Now you are free," Gojo said. The man ran. Vaggie watched the vent. "You gave him another chance." "I gave his employer a message." Nifty replaced the towel and closed the cover. "The laundry is safe again." Gojo looked at the folded fabric. "For tonight." The people at the hotel foyer during a false emergency were doing something ordinary when the danger arrived. Gojo, Vaggie, and an uninvited demon, wearing a guest's face, had been arguing about food, music, work, or who had failed to replace a broken lamp. The intruder activated a claim on the foyer and tried to make the hotel itself eject its residents. Charlie tried to keep the ordinary thing alive long enough for everyone to remember what was at stake. "You picked the wrong building," Vaggie said. Gojo did not take over the room. He placed infinity between the vulnerable and the threat, then asked the residents what they wanted protected. Gojo held the foy stable, while Vaggie identified the real guest whose face had been stolen. Their answer made the defense less efficient and more honest. The intruder escaped with 1 page from the hotel's guest ledger. Angel complained, Husk swore, and Vaggie moved to the position nobody had thought to guard. When the danger passed, the stolen page contained no ownership clause because Charlie had removed it earlier. The ordinary moment returned changed, which was how the hotel knew it had mattered. The assassin's reversed contract became a problem for the person who hired him. The employer was a minor broker named Sable who specialized in selling violence without ever appearing near it. When the mark transferred, every promise attached to the assassination contract began treating Sable as the active agent. By sunrise, 3 weapons he had paid for were trying to follow him. Sable arrived at the hotel furious. Vaggie almost laughed when she saw the contract needles circling his shoulders. Fix this. Gojo leaned against the front desk. Why? You reversed my agreement. You tried to kill me through the laundry vent. I hired someone to test your defenses. Nifty popped out of the hallway. He folded the towel wrong. Sable ignored her. Charlie came downstairs and saw the weapons hovering around him. Are those going to hurt anyone else? Gojo examined the marks. Only if he transfers them again. Sable said nothing. Vaggie understood. You were going to pass it to another assassin. That's what subcontracting is. Husk muttered something obscene. Charlie did the unexpected thing. She offered Sable a chair. He stared at it. I am not staying here. Good, then this can be quick. Why did you send the assassin? Because people pay for reliable threat assessments. Who paid? Confidential. One of the needles moved closer to his ear. Sable flinched. Gojo smiled. The contract dislikes incomplete work. Sable looked furious enough to bite through the problem. Charlie said, we won't remove the mark unless you tell us enough to prevent another attack. That's coercion. The room went quiet. He had a point. Gojo looked at Charlie. Charlie looked at the hovering weapons. Then she corrected herself. You're right. Sable blinked. You can leave with the contract as it is. We won't stop you. If you want help removing it, our condition is information about the threat you created. That changed everything. The front door remained open. Sable could walk out. He looked at the needles. Then at Gojo. Then at Charlie. The buyer used 3 intermediaries. Names. I don't know the first, I know the second. He gave a name tied to Vox's network, but not to Vox directly. Gojo believed him, because the fear pattern changed before the words did. Enough, Gojo said. He separated the assassination command from Sable's body, but left the contract debt attached to the payment chain. The hovering needles dropped onto the lobby floor. Sable rubbed his shoulder. We're even. Vaggie laughed openly this time. No, you're alive. Different thing. Sable left. Nifty collected the needles in a jar labeled laundry, CRMES. Charlie looked at Gojo. Would you have removed it if he gave us nothing? If you asked. I'm asking now. Gojo thought about it. Probably not. He created the danger knowingly. I wouldn't stop him leaving, but I wouldn't volunteer to erase the consequence. Charlie nodded slowly. I think that's fair. Careful, you'll damage my reputation. The assassin never returned. Sable did, months later, with a legitimate security proposal and no hidden needles. The hotel rejected it because his rates were terrible. That felt like progress too. Chapter 40, The Overlord's Invitation. The rebuilt radio theatre, filled with representatives from 3 territories. Alastair stood beside the stage. Gojo sat beneath the spotlight. The invitation had become a public challenge. Choose one faction, reject all 3, or prove that the room could not contain him. A representative read the terms. You will receive passage, protection, and a recognized place. And what do I surrender? Nothing important. Gojo smiled. The contract beneath the stage answered for them. It wanted his name, his public allegiance, and the right to treat every later refusal as betrayal. He tapped the floor. Blue pulled the hidden clauses into the light. Red letters climbed the curtains. The audience read them together. Alastair's smile did not change. A representative reached for a weapon. Gojo let Infinity stop it in front of the stage. This is a theatre, he said. Try to perform better. He tore the spotlight from its mount and aimed it at the representatives. The public saw every term, every omitted price, and every face that had agreed to hide the details. The room did not erupt. It became quiet in the way crowds become quiet when they have been given proof. Gojo rose. I choose none of you. Alastair leaned toward the microphone. And the hotel is not yours either. The public challenge ended without blood, but the invitation had failed. The factions would now have to negotiate with a man who had made their private terms part of the show. At a rebuilt radio theatre, Gojo set one hand against the nearest surface and let the 6 eyes read the law's hell had embedded in it. Gojo, Alastair, and representatives from 3 territories watched the experiment with different kinds of fear. The invitation became a public challenge, requiring Gojo to choose a faction or accept the consequences of refusing. The first test stopped at Infinity. The second reached the space beneath it. Gojo smiled only when the third revealed a condition he could name. If the terms are fair, show them to the audience, Gojo said. He changed the experiment instead of increasing the force. Blue pulled the hidden clauses into the stage lights and forced every representative to answer questions from the crowd. Vaggie called the result reckless. Gojo agreed, then marked the safe boundary in chalk where everyone could see it. The measurement demanded a price. The factions lost their private leverage and the theatre became a political target. Reverse cursed technique repaired the damage, but not the information it had purchased. The scene closed when Gojo chose the hotel without claiming it as his territory. Gojo kept the boundary visible and did not pretend the next test would be safer. The public theatre became neutral ground by accident. After Gojo exposed the hidden clauses under the stage lights, none of the 3 territories wanted to admit ownership of the building. That left the manager with a damaged political venue, unpaid security, and the sudden problem of audiences showing up specifically because they expected someone to reveal another secret contract. The manager came to the hotel with a stack of bills. Your guest ruined my business model. Gojo looked at Charlie. I thought I improved it. The manager slammed the invoices onto the front desk. People now demand to read every agreement before entering. Do you know how long that takes? Husk raised his glass. Sounds terrible. Charlie took the invoices seriously. That was why the manager stayed. The theatre had lost 2 Overlord sponsors in one night. Without them, it could not pay performers, stagehands, or ward maintenance. Gojo's public refusal had created consequences for workers who had not written the trap. We should help, Charlie said. Vaggie frowned. It's not our theatre. Our guest broke the agreement that funded it. The agreement was predatory. Both can be true. Gojo said nothing. Charlie noticed. You're coming. I wasn't avoiding it. You were about to say something annoying about consequences being educational. I still might. The theatre smelled different without Overlord money. No perfume pumped through the vents. No velvet ropes guiding guests into sponsored sections. The stage lights flickered because half the ward crystals had been repossessed. The workers had stayed anyway. A stagehand named Miri showed Charlie the peril ledger. We can last 9 days. What did the sponsors pay for? Everything people think ticket sales pay for: security, repairs, broadcast access, protection fees, replacement bodies after bad shows. Angel, who had come because he knew entertainment businesses too well, stopped joking. Replacement bodies. Miri pointed toward a line item. Performers injured under sponsor-required acts received resurrection assistance if available. The clause looked generous until Gojo read the condition attached to it. Injury support applied only if the performer completed the dangerous act after being warned. They paid people more for proving they understood the risk, Charlie said. They paid people for not backing out, Angel corrected. Gojo's expression cooled. The problem could not be fixed with blue. So they spent the day learning the business. Ticket income, bar revenue, dressing room rents, security costs, broadcast fees, territory taxes, bribes disguised as expedited permit charges. Husk turned out to be alarmingly good with the numbers. Casinos teach you how to recognize a business that survives by hiding the real loss somewhere else. The theater's real loss was protection. Without an overlord sponsor, every minor gang could charge the building for existing on a contested street. Vaggie looked at Gojo. No, I didn't say anything. You're thinking about standing outside until the gangs get bored. That would work. It would make the theater dependent on you. Gojo smiled. You're getting good at this. The alternative came from Miri. What if we make the audience the problem? Everyone stared at her. She explained. The theater had become famous because the hidden contracts were exposed publicly. If it reopened as a venue where all political terms had to be displayed before a show, then any gang attacking it would not be attacking Gojo's property. They would be attacking a place where multiple factions expected their own agreements to be read. Rosie liked public spectacle. Carmilla liked enforceable terms. Even Vox liked audiences too much to let someone else monopolize them. They did not need one sponsor. They needed several interested enemies. Charlie smiled slowly. Mutual inconvenience. Gojo looked delighted. That's almost governance. The reopening show was a disaster. Perfectly. Every sponsor agreement was projected onto the walls before the curtain rose. Audience members booed clauses they disliked. A comedian spent 10 minutes mocking Carmilla's insurance language. Vox bought a broadcast slot and then discovered the host had reserved the right to display the exact editing terms beside his logo. No one controlled the room completely. That was the point. A gang tested the new arrangement halfway through the second act by demanding a street fee at the front door. Gojo did not move. The theater manager handed the collectors a document listing every faction currently holding a financial interest in the night's performance. The collectors read 3 names and left. Angel laughed until he cried. The workers got paid. Not richly, not safely forever. But the building survived the week after Gojo's refusal, without becoming hotel property or returning to a single overlord's protection. Charlie stood in the balcony after the crowd left. You could have fixed all of this faster. Yes. Does that bother you? Gojo looked at the stagehands, counting cash below. A little. Good. He glanced at her. Charlie smiled. You make everyone else uncomfortable all the time. It's healthy for you. Gojo laughed, loud enough for the empty theater to echo. Chapter 41. Adam leaves the bar. Adam entered Husk's bar wearing Heaven's confidence like a coat. Lute stood behind him. Gojo sat at the counter while Husk polished a glass and pretended not to listen. "So you are the sinner everyone is afraid of," Adam said. "Everyone. Enough, people." Adam placed an angelic blade on the bar. The holy metal pushed against the room. Bottles cracked. Husk stopped polishing. Gojo reached toward the blade. Infinity slowed its approach until the metal trembled between them. Adam smiled. Not invincible. Not impressed. Lute lifted her weapon. Adam stopped her. He wanted to see how Gojo reacted to a threat in a crowded room. Gojo noticed the same thing and stood without looking at the blade. Blue pulled the bar's old mirror behind Adam, forcing the angel to see every patron watching him. Adam's smile vanished. "You care about the audience," Gojo said. "I care about the message." "Then take one back to heaven. The hotel is not a hunting ground." Adam grabbed the blade and left. Lute followed, furious. Husk poured a drink for himself. "That was a terrible negotiation," Husk said. "It was not a negotiation." "Then why did he leave?" "Because he wanted to leave before. I gave him a reason not to." Husk considered that and drank. Outside, Adam looked back at the bar once, then kept walking. A public answer was demanded at a bar where Adam had been drinking after leaving the hotel. Gojo, Adam, Husk, and a group of exterminator recruits stood where the crowd could see them, while every faction tried to make the answer sound like a confession. "You are very loud for someone who keeps avoiding the question," Gojo told him. Adam mocked the hotel's rehabilitation plan until a recruit asked whether heaven had ever offered sinners another choice. Gojo let the silence last until the people who had prepared the question began to hear how little of it belonged to them. Charlie spoke before Gojo could turn the moment into a lesson. Adam left before he could answer, but he stopped an exterminator from attacking a bartender on the way out. Her choice changed the crowd's shape and left Gojo responsible for supporting it rather than replacing it. The political price arrived immediately. The bar lost its easy certainty about which side Adam belonged to. No one called the result a victory because victory would have made the next demand easier to hide. Instead, Husk poured Adam's untouched drink into the sink and kept the glass. The hotel gained no throne, only another night in which its residents could decide what kind of place it would be. Adam did not return to heaven immediately. That was the detail Lute hated most. He left Husk's bar, walked 3 blocks through Pentagram City, and stopped beneath a dead billboard where the hotel's lights were still visible in the distance. Lute followed. "We should go." Adam looked at the angelic blade in his hand. "He didn't take it. He couldn't. He could have tried." Lute's jaw tightened. He wanted us to think he wasn't threatened. Adam laughed without humor. Everything he does becomes strategy when you don't like the answer. "Because he is dangerous. So am I. You're an angel." Adam turned. For the first time that night, Lute looked uncertain. "That's not an argument," he said. The words sounded wrong in his own mouth. He had used the distinction for years. Angel, sinner, exorcist, target. Heaven's authority made the categories feel like facts rather than decisions. Gojo had done something irritating in the bar. He had made the patrons visible. Adam had wanted a clean test. Holy blade, infinity, reaction. Instead, Gojo moved a mirror and forced him to see everyone who might pay for the experiment if it escalated. The test had not become less valid. It had become harder to pretend the room did not matter. "You're letting him manipulate you," Lute said. "Obviously." She stared. Adam smiled. "I'm not stupid, Lute. He's doing it on purpose. So are we. The question is whose manipulation survives when everyone can see it." "He is a sinner." "Maybe. You saw the report." "I saw a classification. Heaven wrote, because the alternative made the form annoying. Lute stepped closer. Do not start sounding like Emily. Adam's expression darkened. Don't tell me how to sound. The air between them tightened. Then a bottle rolled out of an alley. Both turned. A bartender stood in the doorway behind it, hands raised. Sorry, trash. Lute's weapon came halfway, free on instinct. Adam caught her wrist. The bartender froze. Lute looked at Adam's hand. He released her immediately. We're leaving, he said. The bartender waited until they were half a block away before retrieving the bottle. Adam did not look back. He thought about it all the way to heaven. The next morning, Sarah called him into council. Emily was already there. That annoyed him enough to be useful. Sarah placed the bar report on the table. You remained in hell for 43 minutes after the encounter ended. I walked. Why? Because I felt like walking. Emily looked at the report, but did not speak. Sarah said, Lute reports that your assessment changed. Lute reports too much. Did it? Adam leaned back. He could give them the old answer. Dangerous sinner, unstable anomaly, threat to extermination doctrine, all true enough to be comfortable. Instead, he remembered the mirror. He cares where the fight happens. Emily looked up. Sarah remained still. Explain. He could have fought me in the bar. He moved the room around the fight instead. He wanted me to see the patrons before I decided what the blade meant. Manipulation, Lute said from the doorway. Adam did not turn. Yes, effective manipulation. Sarah folded her hands. And your conclusion? He's still dangerous. Emily exhaled quietly. Adam continued. But if we keep testing him around civilians, we're teaching him that heaven considers civilians part of the weapon. That's stupid. Lute snapped. We are not changing doctrine because a sinner made you uncomfortable. Adam finally looked at her. I'm changing tactics because repeating a failed test is boring. That sounded more like him. The council relaxed by a fraction. Emily did not. She understood he had said more than tactics. Sarah authorized future direct tests only in cleared areas. Lute objected. Adam supported the rule. That shocked the room more than Gojo drawing blood would have. Afterward, Emily caught him in the corridor. You stopped Lute from attacking a bartender. Adam stopped walking. Who told you? The report. It was nothing. Maybe. He glared. Emily smiled very slightly. Small choices are still choices. Adam hated the sentence because it sounded exactly like something the hotel would put on a wall. He walked away before she could see that he had no answer. Chapter 42. The Exterminators Take Notice. Lute watched the hotel from a rooftop line with 3 exorcist scouts. The first scout threw an angelic shard. Infinity stopped it above the street. The shard rotated, searching for a rule it could recognize. Gojo stepped into view beneath it. Again, Lute ordered. The second scout used a hooked blade. The third fired a burst of holy light. Gojo moved between them, letting the attacks reveal how their weapons shared a command. Blue caught the first shard and pulled it into the second. The weapons collided. Holy sparks fell across the roof. The scouts retreated. Lute raised her weapon. Hold position. Gojo looked up at her. You are measuring me with soldiers who do not know what they are measuring. They know enough. Then ask them what they saw. The scouts did not answer. One had a small cut across his glove, where Infinity had divided the distance, but not erased the edge. Gojo returned the shards to the roof. Take them back. Tell Adam the next test will not be this polite. Lute stared at the weapons. You are threatening heaven. I am correcting its expectations. The scouts vanished into the light. Lute remained for one breath longer, then followed. Gojo watched the roofline empty. The hotel below continued its evening noise. He had not fired Red. He had not needed to. The exorcists had learned that a stopped weapon was still a weapon, and that the next answer would require more than throwing another one. The room at a rooftop visible from Heaven's observation routes had been arranged to make the decision look inevitable. Gojo, Lute, Vaggie, and a squad of exterminators had been given separate seats, separate exits, and one shared document nobody trusted. The squad marked the hotel for future extermination and demanded Gojo surrender before the scheduled purge. Gojo read the space before he read the paper. 6 eyes found the pressure points. Who could leave, who would be blamed, and which silence had been purchased. You have mistaken a calendar for permission, Gojo said. The first answer came from someone other than Gojo. Vaggie confronted the squad, while Gojo cut the mark from the roof without attacking the angels. The change forced the people in the room to stop treating him as the hotel's spokesman. The consequence arrived before anyone signed. The mark's removal exposed the hotel earlier than expected. Gojo did not undo that consequence. He made sure everyone understood why it had happened. When the meeting ended, Lute retreated with a warning that sounded less like doctrine and more like a promise. The hotel remained standing, but its next choice would belong to more than one person. The hotel built its first anti-exorcist drill around a rule nobody liked. Gojo was not allowed to participate. He sat on the bar with a stopwatch while Vaggie organized everyone else. This is humiliating, he said. Good, Vaggie replied. Charlie rang the alarm. The scenario was simple. 3 exorcists on the roof, 1 holy breach in the east wall, Gojo unavailable. The hotel failed in 38 seconds. Angel ran toward the wrong staircase. Husk locked a door that trapped 2 guests on the dangerous side. Charlie tried to direct everyone at once and became a bottleneck. Nifty reached the roof before the designated defenders and had to be physically carried back downstairs. Vaggie stopped the drill. Again. Gojo lifted the stopwatch. Technically, that was 37.6. Nobody asked. The second attempt lasted 1 minute and 12 seconds before a simulated holy shard reached the lobby. The third lasted 2 minutes. By the 5th, people were angry enough to stop trying to look competent. That helped. A guest named Marrow admitted he could not read the evacuation signs when the alarm lights turned red. Angel admitted he kept choosing the stairs closest to his room because he knew them best, even though they crossed beneath the roofline. Husk admitted the fallback door jammed unless someone lifted the handle while turning it. Charlie wrote every failure down. No speeches. No encouragement until the list was complete. Gojo watched from the bar. He had spent most of his life being the answer people built plans around. Strongest, teacher, emergency solution. The person who could enter a situation after everyone else failed and make the failure irrelevant. It was efficient. It also made everyone lazy in ways they rarely noticed until he disappeared. Vaggie tossed him the stopwatch. You're up. Gojo stood, finally. Not fighting, observing from outside. Cruel. The next drill began with Gojo on the roof, pretending to be the exorcist. That was much worse for everyone. The 6 eyes saw every weak route, every hesitation, every place a real attacker would exploit. Gojo used pebbles instead of weapons, flicking them through open windows whenever someone exposed a line. A pebble struck Angel's shoulder. Dead, Gojo called. Fuck you. Also dead emotionally. Keep moving. Another pebble bounced off Husk's hat. Dead. I wasn't even in the route. You were standing under glass. Husk looked up at the window and swore. Charlie reached the second-floor landing. Gojo dropped a pebble toward a guest behind her. Charlie turned to block it. The pebble stopped before reaching her because Gojo caught it with blue. "Wrong," he said. Charlie glared upward. "I protected them. You made yourself the shield. Vaggie assigned you to command. I wasn't going to let them get hit. Then give someone else the job of stopping it." Charlie hated that. Good. The next time, she shouted for Angel to pull the guest behind the wall instead of turning back herself. The pebble missed. By sunset, the hotel had a defense plan that looked nothing like the original. No heroic central stand. Teams of two, routes that assumed someone would panic, doors marked by touch as well as color, spare cloth to wrap holy wounds, mirrors covered during alerts because reflected attacks had already proven dangerous, a specific rule that nobody waited for Gojo if he was absent. Then Vaggie added the final scenario. Gojo present, but wounded. The lobby went quiet. "That's dramatic," Angel said. "It's realistic," Vaggie answered. Gojo's smile disappeared. They ran it. This time he participated as dead weight. No infinity, no blue, no RCT. He let one arm hang useless and walked with an exaggerated limp while everyone else moved around him. Charlie reached for him first, then stopped. "Big guy duty is not in my contract," Angel joked nervously. "Good thing nobody asked your contract," Gojo said. Husk and Angel took his weight together. Vaggie held the route. Charlie kept command. Nifty carried the emergency kit with terrifying enthusiasm. They reached the shelter in 4 minutes and 9 seconds. Slowest run of the day. Best one. Because everyone arrived. Charlie sat on the shelter floor afterward, breathing hard. "I hate this plan." Vaggie sat beside her. "Why?" "Because it's built around things going wrong." Gojo leaned against the wall. "That's what plans are for." Charlie looked at him. "You really believe that?" "I trust heights because they don't promise not to drop you." The sentence came out before he decided to say it. Vaggie looked at him sharply. Charlie waited. Gojo smiled again and pushed off the wall. "Dinner." Neither woman forced the subject. That was one of the reasons he stayed. Chapter 43, The Hotel Door. The false extermination warning reached the streets before it reached Charlie. Sinners ran toward the hotel, carrying bags, children, weapons, and the belief that Gojo could stop heaven from finding them. Charlie opened the front doors. Vaggie organized the crowd into rooms. Gojo stood on the steps and watched panic turn the doorway into a crush. "Close the doors," Vaggie said. "Then they will break them." A man in the crowd raised a stolen blade. The crowd surged. Gojo used blue to pull the weapon upward, but did not pull the man with it. Charlie took his hand. "Tell them the truth." Gojo looked over the crowd. "The hotel can hide you for a while. It cannot make you invisible. If you enter, you accept that the danger may follow." Some ran back into the street. Others crossed the threshold. The man with the blade lowered it, "And if it does follow, then choose whether you run or stand. Do not pretend the building chose for you." Vaggie closed the inner doors once the last guest entered. Charlie marked rooms by capacity. Angel carried supplies. Husk dragged a table against the lobby entrance. The false warning had been designed to make the hotel claim responsibility for every fleeing sinner. Gojo found the signal in the doorbell and cut it before the next message could arrive. The crowd settled into frightened silence. Charlie looked at him. "You could have promised safety." "I could have lied." She nodded slowly and returned to the rooms. The hotel door remained open to the street, but no one crossed it without understanding what the threshold meant. The first movement at the hotel front door at dawn was fast enough to make the watching crowd believe the scene had already chosen its winner. Gojo, Charlie, Vaggie, and envoys waiting outside were caught between the threat and the people behind them. Guests enter by invitation, Charlie said. Powers enter by negotiation. Every faction wanted the door to symbolize ownership, while Charlie wanted it to remain a door. Gojo moved only after the danger revealed its condition. Infinity caught the obvious attack. Blue answered the hidden angle. The final decision was left to the person standing nearest the exit. That person chose badly, then chose again. Gojo refused to stand between Charlie and the envoys, making her answer the first question herself. Vaggie's weapon, Charlie's voice, or a stranger's hand changed the result before Gojo could make the easy answer permanent. The cost was visible in the ground, the broken object, and the people who would have to return tomorrow. The hotel could no longer hide behind Gojo's reputation. By the time the street quieted, Charlie opened the door to a sinner with no political value and closed it on every env. The witnesses had seen power, but they had also seen someone refuse to use all of it. The false extermination warning created a second problem after the doors closed. People stayed. Not for one night, not until the streets calmed. They stayed because the rumor had taught them the hotel might be the only building in Pentagram City where panic would not automatically become a contract. Charlie counted 47 new residents by midnight. The hotel had rooms for 19. This is bad, Vaggie said. Charlie looked at the lobby full of sleeping bodies. This is people needing help. Those are not mutually exclusive. Gojo stood on the upper landing and let the 6 eyes map every heat source, every blocked exit, every overloaded stair, and every contract mark hidden under clothing. The building was not under attack. It was becoming dangerous anyway. That was harder. Angel had given his room to a family of 3 and was pretending the couch was better for his back. Husk had turned the bar into a registration table after threatening anyone who called it registration. Nifty had created a lost and found pile that included 2 knives, a cursed doll, 17 shoes, and 1 demon who had fallen asleep in the wrong basket. Gojo came downstairs. We need fewer people in the lobby. Charlie looked exhausted. I know. No, we need more beds. Different problem. Vaggie followed immediately. Fire routes. Exactly. They walked the building room by room. The old ballroom could hold 12 if the south exit was repaired. The laundry room could hold 4 temporarily if Nifty stopped storing chemicals beside the heater. The basement was unusable because the old contract lines in the foundation reacted to fear and crowded bodies. The roof was safe physically and terrible politically because heaven could see it. Charlie wanted to open every available room. Gojo made her choose which ones could actually remain exits afterward. It made her angry. People are sleeping on the floor. And if the hotel catches fire, they become the floor. Charlie looked like she wanted to yell at him. Then a child-sized sinner near the staircase coughed in the smoke from an overloaded heater. Charlie shut her eyes. Fine, ballroom first. They repaired it before dawn. Not with Blue. Gojo held the warped beam while hotel residents hammered support plates into place. Angel and Husk moved furniture. Vaggie cleared the second exit. Charlie assigned groups by mobility rather than by who arrived first. That decision caused the first real conflict. A broad-shouldered sinner with expensive clothes refused to give up a private room to an injured family. I was here first. Charlie tried to explain. He talked over her. Gojo stepped closer. Vaggie caught his sleeve. Let her do it. He stopped. Charlie looked at the resident. You were here first. That means you know the building better than they do. I need you in the ballroom because you can help people reach the west stairs if the alarm goes. The sinner blinked. You're moving me because I'm useful. I'm asking you to move because you're able. You can say no. He looked at Gojo, clearly expecting the refusal to be fake. Gojo said nothing. The man swore and picked up his bag. Ballroom better have a window. It did. By sunrise, the crowd had become a temporary community and immediately started developing politics. Who got keys? Who could use the kitchen? Whether weapons stayed in rooms? Whether new residents had to participate in hotel activities? Whether Charlie could ask people to leave if they endangered everyone else? The old hotel rules were not enough. Charlie called a meeting. Gojo tried to leave. No, Charlie said. I'm not a resident representative. You're a resident. Guest. You signed the guest agreement. Sit down. He sat because she was technically correct and smug about it. The meeting lasted 3 hours. It was worse than any overlord negotiation because nobody in the room had enough power to force a clean ending. One resident wanted all weapons confiscated. Vaggie refused because the hotel could not guarantee protection. Another wanted everyone to sign a shared defense pledge. Gojo rejected it because fear would turn the signature into coercion. Husk wanted anyone who stole alcohol thrown out immediately. Angel wanted exceptions for borrowing under emotional circumstances. Nobody supported him. The useful rule came from the child-sized sinner who had asked whether the hotel could hide her from an overlord. Can we have doors that mean different things? Everyone stopped. She explained badly and therefore honestly. A room door meant private. The front door meant guest. The ballroom door meant shared. The kitchen meant ask before taking things that were scarce. The shelter door meant nobody could be excluded during an attack. Charlie wrote the categories down. Gojo saw the structure before anyone else. Physical rules instead of soul rules. Vaggie nodded, easy to remember under pressure. Husk added symbols for people who could not read. By evening, every major door had a different mark painted beside the handle. No magic. No contract. Just a visible agreement about what entering that space meant. The first violation happened 10 minutes later when Angel walked into a private room without knocking. He was thrown back into the hallway by the occupant. Rule works, Husk said. The crowded hotel laughed. Gojo stood at the end of the corridor listening. The false extermination warning had been designed to make the hotel accept responsibility for everyone who entered. It had failed. The hotel had done something more difficult. It had accepted people without pretending responsibility meant ownership. Chapter 44: Extermination Pressure. The evacuation route was tested before the extermination began. Vaggie timed the hotel residents. Charlie moved the slowest first. Angel carried 2 bags and complained about both. Gojo watched the rooftops for observers. An exorcist scout appeared at the end of the street. 3 overlord agents appeared behind him. Nobody attacked. They wanted to see which route the hotel would choose. Gojo pointed toward the narrow alley. Not that one. Vaggie looked at him. Why? The buildings are owned by 2 different factions. The first explosion would turn the exit into a contract dispute. Charlie redirected the group through the market road. The agents followed at a distance. The scout marked every turn. Gojo let them. At the plaza, he stopped beside a broken fountain. The evacuation had reached the safe zone, but the observers had not realized the route ended there. Blue pulled the fountain's iron basin into the street. It blocked the path without harming anyone. The scout raised his weapon. Gojo's infinity stopped the first shard. The overlord agents drew guns and found their hands pulled toward the basin instead. You wanted our route, Gojo said. Now you have a dead end. The hotel residents continued into the shelter. Vaggie stayed with Gojo until the last door closed. Why let them watch the beginning? Because they will plan around the wrong exit. The scout vanished. The agents retreated. Charlie returned from the shelter. Everyone is safe. For now. She looked at the blocked street. You made that sound like a threat. It is a schedule. Gojo began at the hotel basement during extermination preparations by asking what had been moved. Gojo, Vaggie, Charlie, and frightened residents answered with 3 different versions, and each version placed responsibility somewhere else. The first warning of the purge arrived as a vibration through the foundation rather than a message. He followed the mismatch through the walls with 6 eyes, tracing ink, heat, residue, and the small physical choices people made when they believed nobody was watching. We are not evacuating because heaven ordered it, Gojo said. We are moving because we choose who lives. The hidden mechanism was not the whole problem. The residents helped design routes instead of waiting for Gojo to protect every hallway. Gojo separated the rule from the person who had abused it and refused to erase the evidence just because it was ugly. The investigation left a wound in the hotel's certainty. The hotel abandoned its safest basement room to keep the exits open. Husk recorded the names, while Charlie decided which of them still deserved a door. At the end, the evacuation map had names beside every route, including the people who had drawn them. The answer was incomplete, but it could be checked by someone other than Gojo. The market evacuation route failed during rain. Nobody had planned for that because Hell's rain usually came hot, thin, and brief. This storm fell heavy enough to turn ash into black paste. The painted arrows disappeared under runoff. The alley Charlie had chosen became a channel of ankle-deep water. One of the portable ward posts sank sideways into mud. Vaggie stood in the street and swore at the sky. Gojo looked delighted. This is not funny, Charlie said. It's useful. You say that about everything terrible. Only the informative things. The evacuation drill continued. Residents moved through the market under umbrellas, blankets, coats, or nothing at all. The first group made it halfway before a wagon wheel jammed in the flooded gutter and blocked the path. Old plan, Gojo moves the wagon. New plan, Gojo was not allowed to touch it. He stood beneath an awning, while everyone else solved the problem. Angel and 2 residents tried to lift the wheel. Too heavy. Husk found a plank. Vaggie redirected the next group before the bottleneck became a crush. Charlie sent Nifty ahead to check whether the shelter entrance had flooded and immediately regretted assigning her anything involving speed. The wagon owner shouted that nobody was allowed to move his cargo. Vaggie shouted back that his cargo was blocking an evacuation route. A territory clerk appeared from nowhere and announced that moving the wagon without permission constituted theft. Gojo covered his face with one hand. Hell is committed to the bit. Charlie walked to the owner. Can we unload the back half onto the dry platform and move the wagon 10 feet? Who's responsible if anything breaks? Charlie hesitated. That was the real problem. Not strength, liability. The clerk smiled because he knew the delay gave him leverage. A resident behind the wagon shouted, I'll witness the inventory. Another said, me too. Husk dragged a chalkboard from a shop entrance and started writing down boxes. There, 23 crates, 2 already cracked, 1 leaking something that smells like lies. The owner looked at the growing crowd. He agreed. They moved the cargo. The wagon cleared. The evacuation continued. The clerk tried to issue a violation anyway. Gojo finally stepped away from the awning. Who owns the road during an emergency? The clerk lifted his chin. The district authority. Who declared the emergency lane? The hotel. Then why are you enforcing district property rules? inside a temporary safety route you refused to recognize. The clerk opened his mouth, closed it. Hask laughed. You made paperwork fight itself. My favorite kind. The storm exposed more than one flaw. The shelter's rear entrance flooded. The red alarm lights reflected off standing water and made the route markers impossible to see. 2 residents with damaged wings could not use the narrow stairs. Angelic observation from the roofline became harder because rain scattered holy light into misleading flashes. Every problem changed the map. Charlie hated erasing the neat route she had drawn. Vaggie erased it anyway. Plans aren't promises. Charlie looked at Gojo. You two are becoming unbearable together. Gojo smiled. Growth. They moved the shelter to an old tram station beneath the market. The station had its own problem, a territory contract on the platform that charged groups larger than 10 for assembly rights. Gojo could remove it. He didn't. Instead, Charlie found the current owner. An elderly sinner named Bex operated a tiny ticket booth nobody used. The assembly fee keeps gangs from taking over the platform, Bex explained. It also charges evacuees, Charlie said. Because evacuees can be gangs. Vaggie rubbed her temple. Gojo leaned against the booth. Can the rule distinguish an emergency? Bex looked offended. It can if someone pays to rewrite it. How much? The number was absurd. Charlie started to argue. Gojo asked a different question. Can you suspend it? Bex hesitated. That meant yes. She could suspend the fee for 6 hours at a time, but doing so made her personally responsible for damages caused by assembled groups. Charlie looked around the flooded street. Then the hotel guarantees repairs during declared evacuations. Vaggie said, we can't guarantee everything. Not everything. Damage to the station caused by people using our route. Bex considered it. Gojo said nothing. The agreement was handwritten on ordinary paper. No sole clauses, no automatic ownership. Bex could cancel it after each emergency. The hotel could stop using the station if the price changed. They signed. The next drill ended in the tram station. Everyone arrived wet, tired, angry, and alive. Gojo looked at the ugly revised map covered in crossed-out arrows, alternate routes, names, and weather notes. Better. Charlie laughed. It looks terrible. Exactly, it looks used. Outside, the storm finally weakened. An exorcist scout, watching from a rooftop, wrote down the new shelter location. Gojo saw her. He let her keep writing. The next drill would assume the enemy already knew. Chapter 45, A Serious Smile. The guest was wounded in the lobby because the attackers believed Gojo protected only people who interested him. A thin angelic line crossed the sinner's side. Charlie caught them before they fell. Angel shouted for help. Vaggie locked the doors. Gojo stood very still. The attacker had used a mirror outside the window. The blade had not traveled through the room. It had crossed from a reflected angle and emerged beside the guest. Gojo, Vaggie said. He touched the wound. Reverse cursed technique closed the flesh, but the holy residue remained. The attacker ran. Gojo followed through the mirror. He emerged on the roof opposite the hotel and found 2 exorcist scouts preparing another shot. The first weapon stopped against infinity. The second shattered under blue. The third scout tried to flee. Gojo crossed the roof in a single step and caught him by the collar. Why this guest? Because you would come. That is not an answer. The scout looked toward the hotel. Heaven wanted to know whether you would choose one sinner over the rest. Gojo released him. The scout fell hard, but lived. When Gojo returned, Charlie was still holding the recovered guest's hand. She did not ask whether he had killed anyone. "You are angry," she said. "I dislike being predictable. That is not the only reason." Gojo looked at the holy residue on his fingers. "Next time they use a guest to test me, the test will cost them more." The people at the hotel courtyard after the evacuation drill were doing something ordinary when the danger arrived. Gojo, Charlie, Vaggie, and Angel Dust had been arguing about food, music, work, or who had failed to replace a broken lamp. The drill revealed that everyone expected Gojo to solve the final crisis alone. Charlie tried to keep the ordinary thing alive long enough for everyone to remember what was at stake. "A serious smile is still a smile," Gojo said. "It does not mean I am doing this without you." Gojo did not take over the room. He placed infinity between the vulnerable and the threat, then asked the residents what they wanted protected. He made each resident choose one responsibility he could not take from them. Their answer made the defense less efficient and more honest. The exercise became slower and messier than a Gojo-led defense. Angel complained, Husk swore, and Vaggie moved to the position nobody had thought to guard. When the danger passed, Charlie kept the slower plan because it left more people capable of acting. The ordinary moment returned changed, which was how the hotel knew it had mattered. The wounded guest's name was Pell. That mattered because every early report called him the test subject, and Charlie nearly tore the first page in half when she saw it. "He's a person," she said. Vaggie took the report from her. "Then write his name." Pell sat on the hotel infirmary bed while the holy residue under his skin continued to resist Gojo's reverse cursed technique. The wound was closed. The pain was not. Gojo had returned from the roof with the attacker's method, but no body. Pell did not seem grateful. "Good. You followed them," Pell said. "Yes. You left me here." Gojo looked at him. Charlie stopped writing. Pell continued. "They hurt me because they wanted you to move. Then you moved." The accusation landed cleanly. Vaggie watched Gojo more closely than Pell. Gojo pulled a chair beside the bed and sat. "You're right." Pell blinked. Charlie did too. "That's it." "No, but it's the first part." Gojo looked at the holy residue, still glowing beneath Pell's skin. "I wanted the attacker before they could repeat the method. I assumed Charlie and the healer could keep you alive. That was tactically reasonable. It also gave them exactly the reaction they were testing." Pell's anger did not disappear. It changed shape. "Would you do it again?" Gojo thought about the roof, the scouts, the mirror route, the moment he had crossed the distance because anger made the answer obvious. "Not the same way." Pell leaned back against the pillow. "That's not an apology." "No." Charlie opened her mouth. Pell raised a hand. "I didn't ask for one." "Good again." He wanted control over what the injury meant. Gojo stood. "Then tell us what changes." Pell stared. "What?" "They used you as a trigger. You survived the trigger. You get a vote on the correction." The meeting moved from the infirmary to the lobby because Pell refused to make decisions from a bed. The hotel residents gathered around the map. Pell described the attack from his view. The mirror outside the window had looked harmless. The first warning was a cold reflection where there should have been warm lobby light. Then the blade appeared beside him without crossing the room. Vaggie wrote, "Reflections are entry points." Angel added, "Cover MIRS during ALERTS." Husk said, "And windows. Half the city is reflective when it rains." Gojo looked at the building differently. Every polished bottle, every framed picture, every dark television screen. A perfect defensive shell would be absurd. So they built interruption instead. Cloths near mirrors, Matte paint on vulnerable surfaces, movable screens in the lobby. A rule that anyone who saw a reflection behave incorrectly shouted before running. Pell added the most important part. And don't chase. Everyone looked at him. He looked at Gojo. If they hit somebody to make you leave the building, don't give them the whole building. Gojo smiled without humor. Fair. The next attack came 2 nights later. Not against Pell. Against an empty guest room. A mirror flashed. An angelic blade emerged and buried itself in the mattress. The alarm rang. Gojo did not pursue. Vaggie sealed the corridor. Charlie moved guests away from reflective surfaces. Angel threw a blanket over the mirror and yelled that he had finally found a heroic use for cheap hotel bedding. Gojo used Blue to pull the blade free while staying inside the building. The remote attacker waited for him to follow. He didn't. Instead, Gojo examined the blade himself, then handed it to Carmilla's courier under guard for analysis. The attacker gained no chase. No exposed route. No second test. Pell watched from the stairs. Better. Gojo looked at him. High praise. Don't get used to it. The serious smile Charlie had noticed did not disappear after that. It changed. Gojo still joked, still provoked, still called danger interesting. But the hotel had gained one person willing to tell him when his reaction made everyone else part of the battlefield. That made Pell valuable in a way no power could measure. 3 days later, Pell asked for a room away from the infirmary. Charlie gave him one. Gojo did not call it recovery. Pell did. Chapter 46, First Blood in Heaven's Game. The alley washed in holy light, contained one exorcist patrol and no civilians. Gojo entered alone. Lute stood at the far end with 3 soldiers. You chose the location. I removed the excuses. The first angelic spear struck infinity and stopped. The second came from behind. Gojo turned, but the blade crossed the final distance and drew a thin line of blood across his ribs. Lute saw it. Your defense has a limit. Your weapon has a condition. Gojo used Blue to pull the spear sideways. One soldier lost his grip. Red struck the wall behind the patrol and threw the others into the light. Lute attacked through the glare. The angelic blade reached him again. Gojo twisted. The wound deepened, but the weapon did not reach the heart. Reverse cursed technique closed the cut while the holy residue resisted. Gojo held the pain open for 1 second longer than necessary. He wanted the rule. Lute withdrew. You could have killed us. I could have learned less. He stepped aside and let the patrol retreat through the light. The alley remained empty. Gojo looked at the blood on his hand and smiled without amusement. Heaven had finally drawn a line through him. The line was thin, conditional, and useful. That was enough to make the next meeting serious. At an alley washed in holy light, Gojo set one hand against the nearest surface and let the 6 eyes read the law's hell had embedded in it. Gojo, Lute, and 3 exorcist soldiers watched the experiment with different kinds of fear. Lute discovered that angelic steel could wound Gojo only when he moved to protect someone else. The first test stopped at infinity. The second reached the space beneath it. Gojo smiled only when the third revealed a condition he could name. Your weapon has a condition, Gojo said through the blood at his side. He changed the experiment instead of increasing the force. He allowed the patrol to retreat after learning the condition instead of killing them. Vaggie called the result reckless. Gojo agreed, then marked the safe boundary in chalk where everyone could see it. The measurement demanded a price. Holy residue remained in his body and interfered with reverse cursed technique. Reverse cursed technique repaired the damage, but not the information it had purchased. The scene closed when Heaven left with proof of a limit, while Gojo left with proof that restraint could be exploited. Gojo kept the boundary visible and did not pretend the next test would be safer. The holy residue in Gojo's side refused to leave quietly. Reverse cursed technique closed the tissue around it. The 6 eyes could see the foreign rule remaining like a bright splinter threaded through the repaired muscle. Every time he expanded infinity too aggressively, the residue heated. He hid that for 6 hours. Then he reached for a coffee mug and dropped it. Husk stared at the shattered ceramic. Gojo stared too. "Don't," he said. Husk put down the glass he was polishing. "I didn't say anything. Your face did." "My face said you're paying for the mug." Gojo bent to pick up the pieces. Pain tightened under his ribs. Husk saw it. Vaggie. Traitor. The hotel reacted as if someone had fired a weapon indoors. Charlie appeared first, Vaggie second. Angel leaned over the upstairs railing. Nifty arrived carrying bandages, scissors, and an object nobody identified because everyone was afraid to ask. "I'm fine," Gojo said. Vaggie drove the butt of her spear against the floor. "Sit." Infinity did not help against tone. Gojo sat. Carmilla arrived within the hour with a sealed case. Vaggie had sent for her before Gojo could object. The weapons dealer examined the residue through a lens made from black crystal. "It is not poison." "I know. It is not inside you in the physical sense." "I know." "Then stop answering questions nobody asked." Angel laughed from the doorway. Carmilla continued. The steel left a command, a small one, something like remain recognized as wounded. Charlie frowned. The wound wants him to stay wounded. The weapon wants the injury to remain true. His technique keeps changing the body. The holy command keeps restoring the meaning. Gojo looked delighted despite himself. Vaggie pointed at him. "No, whatever face that is, stop. This is fascinating. You dropped a mug. A cheap mug." Husk shouted from the bar. It was not cheap. The cure could not be brute force. Gojo tried once. RCT surged through his side. The command brightened and pushed back. Pain hit hard enough to blur the room for half a second. Charlie grabbed his shoulder. "Stop." He stopped. That mattered more than anyone commented on. Carmilla proposed cutting the residue with another angelic fragment. Vaggie rejected it. 2 commands can reinforce each other. Gojo asked, "What happens if the wound stops being mine?" Silence. Charlie looked horrified. "No transferring it. Not to a person." He pointed at the blood-stained bandage from the original fight. The material still carried a weak trace of the injury. 6 eyes followed the relationship. Weapon, wound, target, evidence. Hell loved records. Heaven apparently did too. "The command says the injury remains true," Gojo said. "Maybe it doesn't care where the truth is stored." Vaggie slowly understood. "Give it a better record." They built one. Not magical at first. A written account of the strike, the exact location, the weapon type, the condition they had learned, Gojo's blood on the original bandage, Carmilla's analysis, Vaggie's testimony as a former exorcist. Then Charlie added one sentence. "The injury happened. Healing it does not erase that fact." Gojo looked at her. "That's annoyingly good." "Thank you." They placed the record beside the angelic fragment Carmilla had kept. Gojo touched the scar. RCT moved again. The holy command resisted. Then hesitated. The bandage glowed. The written record warmed. The residue in Gojo's side transferred not as light or metal, but as recognition. The scar faded while the evidence on the table became brighter. Pain vanished. Nobody moved. Carmilla breathed out. You gave the weapon proof that the injury remained real after healing. Gojo rolled his shoulder. Heaven needs better metaphysics. Vaggie looked at the record. No, this makes sense. Extermination depends on permanent judgment. A healed wound is a contradiction unless the judgment can survive somewhere else. Charlie touched the page carefully. Then we keep the evidence. Gojo said, obviously. Not as a trophy. His smile softened. No. The next time Heaven tested him, the hotel would know something new. Holy wounds did not simply damage his body. They tried to make damage part of what he was. That was a kind of ownership too, but not the contractual kind Hell used. It was judgment made physical. Gojo understood why Vaggie hated it. He understood a little more about why Charlie's project bothered Heaven. If a sinner could change, then an eternal wound was not evidence. It was a refusal to update the record. Chapter 47, Pentagram Plaza. Heaven chose the central plaza because Hell could not look away. Exorcists formed a ring around Gojo. Sinners crowded the edges. Overlord watchers occupied balconies and pretended they had come for entertainment. Lute raised her weapon. The first wave moved together. Gojo used blue to pull 3 attackers out of formation. Red pushed the next group away from the crowd. Infinity stopped the blades that tried to exploit the confusion. A child-sized sinner fell near the fountain. Gojo crossed the plaza, caught a spear against Infinity, and carried the sinner behind a stone pillar before returning to the center. The crowd saw the choice. One overlord shouted that Gojo had lost his advantage. Gojo looked toward the balcony. No, I changed the target. The exorcists attacked again. Gojo cut the stone beneath their feet without cutting the soldiers. The ring broke. Lute signaled retreat before the public could become a mass casualty. Gojo could have opened hollow purple across the plaza. He did not. The watching factions would have learned only that he could erase a street. The smaller display taught them something worse. He could choose exactly how much power they were allowed to see. The exorcists withdrew into light. The plaza remained standing. The crowd did not cheer. It understood that Gojo had protected people without becoming their hero. A public answer was demanded at Pentagram Plaza after an extermination warning. Gojo, Charlie, Vaggie, and thousands of watching sinners stood where the crowd could see them, while every faction tried to make the answer sound like a confession. They are using your fear as a signature, Gojo told the crowd. A public broadcast demanded that the hotel surrender its protection or let the city be punished with it. Gojo let the silence last until the people who had prepared the question began to hear how little of it belonged to them. Charlie spoke before Gojo could turn the moment into a lesson. Charlie spoke first and asked the sinners whether they wanted the hotel to decide for them. Her choice changed the crowd's shape and left Gojo responsible for supporting it rather than replacing it. The political price arrived immediately. The crowd split instead of uniting behind a simple answer. No one called the result a victory because victory would have made the next demand easier to hide. Instead, Gojo raised one hand only after the people who chose to stay formed their own line. The hotel gained no throne, only another night in which its residents could decide what kind of place it would be. Pentagram Plaza became unusable for 3 days after the fight. Not because Gojo destroyed it, because everyone wanted to stand where he had stood. Sinners marked the place where the child had fallen. Overlord agents measured the cuts in the stone. Heaven's observers photographed the path of every angelic weapon. Street vendors sold drinks named Infinity, Blue, and definitely not Hollow Purple, which Gojo bought once and declared fraudulent. Charlie hated the spectacle. Someone almost died there. Angel looked at the souvenir stalls. That's usually how landmarks happen down here. The child-sized sinner Gojo had carried behind the fountain, returned on the second day. Her name was Tessa. She came with an older brother who looked ready to fight the entire hotel out of embarrassment. "You saved her," he told Gojo. Gojo stood beside the broken fountain, eating something fried from a paper bag. "She fell. I moved her. That's saving. Words are getting expensive around here." Tessa ignored both of them and pointed at the missing section of stone. "Did I make you lose?" Gojo stopped chewing. The question hit harder than Lute's blade had. "No. The man on the balcony said you lost your advantage because you came for me." Her brother swore. Gojo crouched so they were closer to eye level. "He was wrong. You said you changed the target." "I did. From winning to me." Gojo looked at the plaza. The crowd had heard that line. Broadcasters had repeated it because it sounded heroic. That was exactly the kind of story he distrusted. Clean, flattering, and dangerous if people learned the wrong lesson from it. "From their plan to mine," he said. "They wanted me to stay in the middle and prove I cared more about looking unbeatable than about what happened around me. You falling gave me a reason to move. That's not the same as you costing me something." Tessa thought about it. "So I helped. Accidentally. Don't build a career around it." She smiled. Her brother did not. "Everyone is saying the hotel protects children now." Charlie, who had been listening nearby, stepped in. "We protect guests. We help people when we can. We don't have a special claim on children." The brother looked relieved and disappointed at the same time. "Then what are we supposed to do?" Charlie pointed toward the plaza's new shelter markers. "Learn where to go when fighting starts. Don't wait for Gojo. Don't wait for me." That answer spread more slowly than the heroic version. So they made it visible. The hotel worked with nearby vendors to repaint the plaza. Not as a monument, as an emergency map. Blue arrows toward cover, white marks for exits, red circles around places where angelic weapons had cut through demonic defenses. The broken fountain became a supply point with bandages, water, and a bell. Gojo objected to the bell. "It's ugly." Vaggie tightened the mounting bolt. "Good." He was outnumbered. The first public drill drew more spectators than participants. Gojo refused to demonstrate any technique. Charlie explained routes. Vaggie showed how to recognize angelic light. Angel taught people how to drag someone larger than themselves without dislocating both shoulders. Husk taught everyone the most important lesson: do not stop in a doorway to argue. Then Lute appeared above the plaza. Not attacking. Watching. Every sinner noticed. The drill stopped. Gojo looked up. Lute held no spear. "Continue," she said. Nobody moved. Charlie took one step into the open. "Why are you here?" "Observation." Vaggie tensed. Gojo did not. He could see the discomfort in Lute's posture. Heaven had sent her to learn how hell prepared for angelic violence. Every instinct in the square said this was absurd. Charlie turned back to the crowd. "Continue." The drill resumed. Slowly, people used the exits, while Lute watched them learn how to survive her kind. Gojo watched Lute watch them. That was the interesting part. At the end, Tessa rang the ugly bell. Everyone reached cover. Lute descended to the edge of the plaza. Vaggie met her halfway. "You going to report that we're preparing?" "Yes." "And?" Lute looked at the shelter marks. "And that civilians know where not to stand." Vaggie waited for the insult. It did not come. Liu left. Gojo looked at the painted plaza. The fight had become a map instead of a monument. Better. Chapter 48. The Devil's Hotel. Lucifer arrived at the hotel without a guard. Charlie met him in the lobby. Alastair appeared beside the radio. Gojo sat on the staircase and watched the King of Hell study the building. "You have made this place politically impossible to ignore," Lucifer said. "That sounds like a compliment." "It is an invoice." Lucifer offered a royal decree. The hotel would receive protection, funding, and recognition. In exchange, Gojo would be listed as a resident under the Morningstar crown. Charlie opened her mouth. Gojo raised one hand. "Do not answer for me." Lucifer smiled. "You dislike being represented." "I dislike being owned." The decree unfolded on its own. Its final line classified every guest under royal protection, which also made every guest a royal responsibility. The hotel would become a crown property, and Gojo would become its most valuable weapon. Blue pulled the final line from the parchment. The decree curled in Lucifer's hand. Charlie looked at her father. "We need help. We do not need a cage." Lucifer studied her, then Gojo. "You are both difficult." "Family trait," Charlie said. Gojo stood. "If the hotel survives, it survives by choice." Lucifer folded the useless decree. "Then choose carefully." He left without making a threat. Alastair's radio crackled. "A royal visit without a bargain. How disappointing." Gojo looked at Charlie. "Your father is less foolish than your guests think." Charlie smiled. "That is almost praise." "Do not waste it." The room at the hotel lobby beneath a royal seal had been arranged to make the decision look inevitable. Gojo, Charlie, Lucifer's messenger, and Alastair had been given separate seats, separate exits, and one shared document nobody trusted. The seal offered the hotel legal protection while quietly naming it a royal possession. Gojo read the space before he read the paper. 6 eyes found the pressure points. Who could leave, who would be blamed, and which silence had been purchased. "A crown can shelter a building and still own everyone inside it," Gojo said. The first answer came from someone other than Gojo. Charlie rejected the seal, and Lucifer's messenger admitted the offer had never been meant to be refused. The change forced the people in the room to stop treating him as the hotel's spokesman. The consequence arrived before anyone signed. The hotel lost royal immunity before the purge. Gojo did not undo that consequence. He made sure everyone understood why it had happened. When the meeting ended, Alastair stopped smiling when Charlie chose vulnerability in front of the whole lobby. The hotel remained standing, but its next choice would belong to more than one person. Lucifer returned the next evening without a decree. He brought a toolbox. Charlie stared at it. "Dad, your west hinge is embarrassing." Gojo, sitting on the lobby railing, looked delighted. "I said the same thing." "Nobody asked either of you." Lucifer set the toolbox beside the front door and knelt to inspect the hinge, as if he had not once ruled hell through wars, contracts, and impossible power. Vaggie stood nearby with her arms crossed. Alastair's radio clicked on. Lucifer looked toward it. "If you comment, I break you." The radio clicked off. Gojo laughed. Charlie did not. She waited until Lucifer removed the first screw. "Why are you really here?" Lucifer kept working. "Because royal protection was rejected." "That's not an answer." He sighed. "You get that from him." "I got it from you." The screw stopped turning. Gojo quietly stood and walked toward the bar. Vaggie followed. They gave father and daughter the lobby without pretending they were not listening from 30 feet away. Lucifer sat back on his heels. "I offered the decree because the purge is coming. And I know what happens when heaven decides a place is inconvenient. Charlie looked at the repaired guest forms on the front desk, the shelter maps, the door symbols, the names of observers in the public ledger. And I know what happens when protection means nobody gets to leave without permission. I wasn't going to trap you. The decree would have trapped everyone else. Lucifer's jaw tightened. Royal responsibility requires authority. Why? Because responsibility without authority is just being blamed for outcomes you couldn't control. That was a better argument than Charlie wanted. She sat on the floor opposite him. Then maybe I accept being blamed. Lucifer stared. That is not noble. That is stupid. Maybe. Charlie. Dad, you keep offering ways to make the hotel safer that also make the hotel yours. I need help learning how to protect people without becoming the thing they need protection from. Lucifer looked toward Gojo at the bar. Gojo raised both hands. Don't involve me. This is excellent. Charlie threw a screw at him. Infinity stopped it. Lucifer almost smiled. Then the expression disappeared. He is making you reckless. Charlie looked offended. I was reckless before he got here. True, Vaggie muttered. I heard that. Lucifer returned to the hinge. What do you actually want from me? Charlie had expected another argument. The question made her pause. Information. About heaven. About hell. Lucifer looked up. Charlie continued. Which laws are real? Which protections exist without ownership? Which parts of the city answer to the crown even if nobody uses them? What can I legally do for guests without turning the hotel into royal territory? Lucifer's expression became complicated. You want administrative law? Yes. Gojo whispered to Husk. She's becoming terrifying. Husk nodded solemnly. Lucifer opened the toolbox and removed a folded packet from beneath the wrench tray. I brought these in case the decree failed. Charlie stared. You planned for me to say no. I raised you. The packet contained old municipal charters, neutral shelter provisions, emergency guest rights statutes, abandoned legal mechanisms nobody had used because overlord contracts were faster. Charlie read the first page. Her eyes widened. Public sanctuary status. Lucifer nodded. It predates most current territories. It gives a building limited protection during declared emergencies without transferring ownership to the crown. Why didn't you offer this first? Because it is weaker. Weaker for who? Lucifer looked at her. Gojo smiled into his coffee. Charlie understood. Royal decree would have given Lucifer more control. Sanctuary status would give the hotel more responsibility. This is what I want. Lucifer looked pained. Of course it is. They spent the rest of the evening repairing the hinge and reading law. Gojo joined when the documents became interesting. Vaggie marked every clause that could be abused. Husk discovered sanctuary buildings were exempt from 3 local alcohol fees and became the most enthusiastic legal scholar in the room. The hotel did not gain immunity. It gained a process. Emergency declarations, guest limits, public records, duties to admit inspectors under specific conditions, rights to refuse territory claims during sanctuary periods. Messy. Weak in several places. Real. Charlie signed the application before midnight. Lucifer witnessed it without adding the royal seal. That was harder for him than protecting the hotel outright. Gojo noticed. So did Charlie. At the door, Lucifer tested the repaired hinge twice. Still slightly low, Gojo said. Lucifer looked at him. 4 millimeters. Gojo grinned. Charlie groaned. For the first time, the royal visit ended with an argument about carpentry instead of ownership. Chapter 49. The Hollow Purple Warning. The empty avenue beyond the hotel had been cleared before Gojo arrived. Adam stood with Lute and 3 Overlord observers. They wanted to see the attack Heaven feared and Hell hoped to buy. Gojo raised one hand. Tell them to remember the empty street. Adam laughed. You are threatening a demonstration. I am offering them a boundary. He formed the beginning of Hollow Purple. Blue and red twisted together above the asphalt. The air folded. Windows along the avenue cracked without sound. Lute ordered the observers back. Gojo held the technique at the edge of release. The combined force erased a strip of empty road. It did not reach the buildings, but the absence it left behind was clean enough to silence the audience. Adam's smile faded. That would have killed everyone here. Yes. Then why stop? Because you brought observers instead of targets. The observers exchanged frightened glances. Gojo let the technique dissolve. The avenue remained damaged, but the hotel stood beyond it. Lute tightened her grip on the spear. You expect us to leave you alone? No, I expect you to understand the cost of making the hotel your battlefield. Adam looked toward the hotel lights. For once, he did not answer immediately. Gojo turned away from the empty road. He had shown them the shape of escalation without spending the weapon on a crowd. The warning was not mercy, it was a price list. The first movement at the hotel roof under a clear red sky was fast enough to make the watching crowd believe the scene had already chosen its winner. Gojo, Charlie, Vaggie, and the residents below were caught between the threat and the people behind them. This is not a warning because I am angry, Gojo said. It is a warning because I measured the distance. Gojo tested the conditions for Hollow Purple and realized a full release would erase the hotel route as well as the attackers. Gojo moved only after the danger revealed its condition. Infinity caught the obvious attack. Blue answered the hidden angle. The final decision was left to the person standing nearest the exit. That person chose badly, then chose again. He showed the residents the safe line and let them decide whether the hotel remained in place. Vaggie's weapon, Charlie's voice, or a stranger's hand changed the result before Gojo could make the easy answer permanent. The cost was visible in the ground, the broken object, and the people who would have to return tomorrow. The hotel lost part of its roof and gained a boundary no faction could pretend not to understand. By the time the street quieted, the warning became a promise to defend the hotel without pretending power had no price. The witnesses had seen power, but they had also seen someone refuse to use all of it. The empty avenue stayed empty after the Hollow Purple demonstration. That was deliberate. Nobody wanted to rebuild before knowing whether Gojo might use the street again. Overlord engineers marked the erased strip as a hazard. Heaven's observers measured the edge of the absence from rooftops. Street vendors moved 2 blocks away and advertised authentic Hollow Purple viewing snacks. Gojo hated the snacks. They're grape-flavored, Angel said. Purple is not a flavor. Tell capitalism. The hotel held a meeting about the avenue because Charlie refused to let a warning become permanent urban damage without discussion. Gojo expected the meeting to be about repairs. It became about fear. A shop owner from the next block stood in the lobby holding a cracked window frame. You said the road was empty. It was. My customers weren't. They saw the sky bend. Half of them haven't come back. Another resident said, Good, maybe Heaven thinks twice. The shop owner rounded on him. You don't pay my rent. The room erupted. Gojo sat still. That was new. Charlie let people argue until the useful parts emerged. The warning had worked tactically. Heaven understood the upper limit better. Overlords understood Gojo could escalate far beyond his ordinary displays. The hotel gained deterrence. The neighborhood gained a damaged road, lost business, and a reputation for being one mistake away from erasure. All true. Vaggie looked at Gojo. What would you change? He thought about the attack forming over his hand, blue and red meeting, the absolute confidence that he could stop before the buildings. He had stopped. That did not mean the decision was free. I denounced the test earlier. The shop owner laughed bitterly. So we can close before you terrify everyone. Yes, that's it. No, I'd pay for the road. The room quieted. Gojo looked annoyed by his own answer. I broke it. Charlie smiled. Don't. I didn't say anything. Your face did. Vaggie almost laughed. The repair fund became complicated immediately. If Gojo paid everything personally, the avenue risked becoming his territory by financial precedent. If the hotel paid, opponents could claim the demonstration was official hotel policy. If Lucifer paid, royal ownership arguments returned. Husk solved it with brutal practicality. Compensation account, damage only. No ownership, no improvement rights, no future claim. Pay people for what broke and let them decide what to rebuild. The shop owners liked that more than charity. Gojo liked it more than being thanked. The avenue reopened in stages. The erased strip could not be restored normally. Whatever Hollow Purple had removed had left a clean absence in the street's old demonic claims. Contractors refused to pave over it until they understood whether the missing rules would spread. That created an opportunity nobody expected. The neighborhood voted to make the strip a neutral crossing. No territory marks, no toll sigils, no ownership contracts attached to the pavement. Just road. Overlords objected immediately. The shop owners objected back. It exists because none of you can prove your old claim survived, one said. Carmilla's lawyers agreed reluctantly. Vox's did not. Rosie's representatives called the idea charming and therefore dangerous. Lucifer's office declined to interfere because the avenue was not Crown property. Gojo stood at the first public opening, while workers painted plain white lines across the repaired edges. Charlie joined him. You erased part of the street and accidentally created neutral ground. I'm talented. You were reckless. Also talented. Heaven sent Lute to observe the opening. She landed at the far end of the strip, with no weapon drawn. The crowd tensed. Gojo looked at her. You came for another demonstration. No. Disappointing. Lute looked at the white road. Our report says the attack had enough force to erase everyone in the plaza. Correct. And you stopped it. Also correct. Why show us at all? Gojo's answer came easily. Because people behave differently when they know the price before they choose escalation. Lute looked toward the hotel. You expect heaven to fear you. I expect heaven to calculate. Fear is sloppy. She considered that. Then she walked across the neutral strip. No holy mark activated. No demonic territory claim challenged her. She reached the other side and looked back as if irritated by the fact that nothing dramatic happened. Gojo smiled. Congratulations, you used a road. Lute vanished into light without answering. Charlie laughed. The hollow purple warning had begun as a price list. It ended by creating one place in Pentagram City where, for the moment, nobody could charge admission to the ground itself. Chapter 50, An Impossible Factor. The hotel steps filled before sunrise. Charlie stood at the doors with Vaggie beside her. Angel watched the street from the railing. Husk had brought coffee for everyone except the people asking for it. Across the road, Overlord messengers waited under different-colored umbrellas. Above them, a thin line of holy light marked where heaven had been watching. No one had come to attack. They had come to decide what Gojo meant. Carmilla's representative carried a territory offer. Vox's messenger carried a broadcast contract. A smaller demon carried a royal seal from Lucifer's office. The angelic watcher carried no paper at all. Charlie looked at Gojo. They want an answer. They want a category. The Vox messenger stepped forward. The city needs to know whether you stand with the hotel. Gojo glanced at the hotel doors. I stand where I choose. The representative from Carmilla unfolded the territory offer. Then choose a side. No. The royal messenger opened his mouth. Gojo lifted one finger. Do not read it. I already know what it says. The angelic watcher descended to the street. Holy light gathered around her weapon, but she did not draw it. Heaven will not permit an uncontrolled anomaly to become a power center. Then heaven should have arrived before I became one. The street went quiet. A messenger behind Charlie moved toward the hotel door. 6 eyes caught the mark beneath his glove. He had been sent to activate a claim on the building if Gojo accepted any offer in public. Blue pulled the mark from his hand and dropped it onto the pavement. The representatives stepped back. Charlie looked at the broken seal. They were waiting for you to speak. People who cannot control an answer prefer to control the room. She turned to the gathered factions. The hotel is open to guests. It is not a territory, an asset, or a royal office. Vaggie added, and anyone who threatens the people inside answers to us. Gojo looked at her. You have started saying that as though it is true. It will be. The statement pleased him more than it should have. The angelic watcher raised her head toward heaven. Carmilla's messenger folded the territory offer. Vox's representative began recording until Gojo looked directly at the device and made the signal collapse. No one left satisfied. That was the closest thing to an agreement the morning produced. Charlie went back inside to organize breakfast. Angel followed her, complaining that political history had delayed his food. Husk poured coffee. Vaggie remained on the steps beside Gojo. You could have chosen the hotel, she said. I chose not to let them choose it for me. And what happens now? Gojo watched Pentagram City wake beneath red light. The hotel had survived contracts, overlords, heaven's tests, and its own habit of trying to make him better. It had also become the one place where his refusal created consequences for other people. He smiled. Now everyone learns what an impossible factor costs. He walked inside. The doors remained open behind him, not as a promise of safety, but as a choice that still belonged to the people who crossed the threshold. The first week after the factions failed to classify Gojo was quieter than anyone trusted. No attack on the hotel, no overlord ultimatum, no angelic test shard appearing through a window. Vox's cameras stayed farther away. Alastair smiled exactly as much as usual, which meant nothing. Lucifer's office sent the sanctuary application back with 12 requested corrections and no attempt to replace it with a decree. Charlie became suspicious of the peace on day 3. Something is wrong. Husk poured coffee. Nothing is exploding. That's what feels wrong. Gojo sat on the lobby couch, with his feet on a table Vaggie had repeatedly told him was not a footrest. They're waiting. For what? Charlie asked. For us to define ourselves without pressure. Vaggie understood immediately. Then they used the definition later. Probably. Charlie looked around the hotel. The answer was everywhere and nowhere. Guests' shelter rules, public ledgers, neutral observation posts, evacuation maps, the contract clinic wall, the new sanctuary paperwork, a neighborhood that occasionally asked the hotel to help and increasingly told it when help was unwanted. "Maybe we should define ourselves," she said. Gojo looked at her. Vaggie frowned carefully. Charlie called a residents' meeting. This time, the lobby could not hold everyone. They moved into the ballroom and opened the windows. Hotel residents filled chairs. Nearby shop owners came because the hotel's rules affected their street. Carmilla sent a legal observer. Lucifer sent nobody officially, which meant 3 unofficial clerks appeared and pretended to be tourists. Heaven's observation roof was occupied before the meeting began. Gojo stood at the back. Charlie noticed. "You're not sitting up front." "No." "Why?" "Because they're going to look at me every time you say something complicated." She hated that he was right. So she put him behind a pillar. Angel called it the most successful use of architecture in hell. Charlie opened with a question. "What is the hotel for?" The answers were terrible. Protection. Redemption. Free rooms. Annoying overlords. Breakfast. Husk shouted, "Breakfast is not free forever." Charlie wrote everything down. Then she asked, "What does the hotel owe people who stay here?" The room became serious. Safety when possible, honest warnings when not, a room that did not create debt, the right to leave, the right to refuse rehabilitation activities, the right not to become evidence in someone else's political argument without consent. Gojo listened. That last one came from Pell. Good. Then Charlie asked the harder question. What do guests owe the hotel? Not loyalty. That answer came first and loudly. Not worship, not secrecy, not permanent residence. Eventually the list became practical. No deliberate attacks on residents, no hidden contracts targeting the building, participate in emergency drills if physically able. Do not claim hotel protection while committing violence elsewhere. Tell someone if a danger follows you inside. Vaggie added, weapons could be kept, but common rooms had rules about drawing them. Husk added, if you finished the last bottle of something expensive, you replaced it. Charlie refused to put that in the charter. Husk started a separate bar charter. Gojo stayed silent until someone asked the question. Everyone outside the hotel wanted answered. What is Gojo to this place? The room turned toward the pillar. He leaned out. Tall. Vaggie threw a pencil at him. Infinity stopped it. Serious answer, Charlie said. Gojo stepped into view. He could say guest. Protector. Resident. Weapon. Friend. Every word carried a different hook, because Hell had spent 50 chapters trying to turn nouns into ownership. He looked at the people in the room. I'm Gojo. I live here right now. I defend people here when I choose to. I follow the rules I agreed to. I can leave. You can tell me no. A shop owner raised a hand. That's not a title. Exactly. Charlie smiled. The charter recorded his status as resident guest, no command authority. Gojo objected to the phrase resident guest on aesthetic grounds and lost the vote. That evening, the document was posted publicly. Every faction reacted. Vox called it propaganda, designed to hide Gojo's real control. Carmilla's lawyers called it unusually precise. Rosie sent flowers and a note saying she adored a constitution with a bar appendix. Heaven requested clarification on whether sanctuary status extended to combatants during extermination. Lucifer's office returned the application again, this time with only 3 corrections. Alastair read the entire charter on air without commentary. That worried everyone most. The next challenge came from inside. A guest named Ven refused to follow the new emergency drill rule. You said I could refuse hotel activities. Charlie checked the charter. He was right and wrong at the same time. Rehabilitation activities were optional. Emergency procedures were not, unless a guest physically could not participate. Ven called that coercion. The room split instantly. Gojo started to speak. Charlie raised one hand. He stopped. She asked Ven why he refused. Not because he opposed drills. Because the alarm sound matched a contract bell used by his former overlord, and every test left him unable to think for hours. The rule had been reasonable. The implementation was not. They changed the alarm. Not for everyone. They added a second signal in the hall where Ven lived and gave residents the option to train on either one. The charter survived its first challenge by changing without disappearing. Gojo stood in the doorway afterward. That's annoyingly functional. Charlie looked tired and proud. Meaning is easier to test than hope. He recognized his own words from months earlier. Don't quote me. Too late. That night, he climbed to the roof alone. Pentagram City spread beneath him in red light, contracts, territory lines, and ordinary windows where people were doing things no power cared about. Heaven watched from above. Overlords watched from towers. The hotel behind him made enough noise to ruin solitude properly. Nolan had died refusing to kneel because ownership had looked like the final threat. Gojo had arrived in hell, believing the same refusal would be enough. It wasn't. Refusal could keep a person free. It could not, by itself, build anything worth staying for. The roof door opened. Vaggie stepped out. Charlie says you missed dinner. I'm being reflective. Do it with food. She handed him a plate. Gojo accepted it. Below, someone rang the new emergency bell by mistake. A second signal answered from the West Hall. People complained. Nobody panicked. Vaggie leaned on the parapet. Still planning to leave whenever you want. Gojo looked at the open roof door. Yes. Good. He glanced at her. Vaggie shrugged. It would mean less if you stayed, because you couldn't leave. Gojo smiled. That was the answer the factions had failed to force from him. Not allegiance. Not ownership. Choice repeated often enough to become a home. He carried the plate downstairs.